Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Navigating Trump 2.0. This is the show that takes a look at the week that was in Washington, D.C. through the lens of the second Trump administration. And joining me, as they do every week, Dan Andros and David Brody. Of course, David Brody, CBN News chief political analyst, and Dan Andros, the host of the CBN podcast Quick Start. Some big news here as we record on Friday afternoon, gentlemen, and that is it looks like we have the beginnings of a ceasefire/peace deal between Israel and Hamas, at least the first phase of a ceasefire is in place between Israel and Hamas, with the release of all Israeli hostages held by Hamas coming in the next few days. Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner have been working behind the scenes to get the two sides to agree to some compromises here. And this is obviously welcome news to everyone praying that this ceasefire holds, that Hamas lives up to their end of the deal, and that the Israeli hostages, the living Israeli hostages, finally are able to return home more than 2 years after this conflict began. So, David, there is still a lot of things that could go sideways with this, but as we sit here right now, it appears it's good news for all involved at the moment.
I think the key word there, John, was appears. Like you said, John, I'm glad you did all the disclaimers, and I'll add a few more asterisks, because who the heck knows if this is going to go sideways or not. And we haven't even talked about phase two, because that's where it really gets hairy, if you will, which I'm sure we'll talk about here in a moment. But look, I mean, how do you not give President Trump at this point the victory lap? I mean, how do you not? I mean, even liberals. I saw David Ignatius, the Washington Post columnist on MSNBC the other day, saying kudos to President Trump. I mean, I needed smelling salts. I mean, so the point is that these folks, I mean, you have to admit it, that the art of the deal, here it is. And what was the art of the deal? There were two things crucial to this deal. Well, there's a lot of things that were crucial, but the two things that stand out to me. First of all, he got buy-in from the Arab nations. That was key. He needed to do that. And so I believe that actually it was the Abraham Accords, or he calls them the Abraham Accords. That was key in the first term. With David Friedman and the U.S. ambassador over there and Jared Kushner, and all the work that they did, because it laid the seeds for what we saw this time around, which is actual, we hope, a phase one peace agreement of some sort. So that was key. Also, strategically within that, this is a subset of that first point. Look, this just in, like, the whole world hates Israel. Okay, all right, I'm joking around, but like, go to the UN and you know what I'm talking about. And so what they did was they strategically said, you know what? We don't care if the whole world hates Israel. What we care about, we got to make sure Qatar, Turkey, Egypt, UAE, Saudi Arabia, that they're on board. They cherry picked 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever you call it. Arab nations said, we need buy-in from them. And if we get buy-in from them, we're good. And that's exactly what happened. So that's the first element of this. And the other element, let's be honest, this peace agreement would not be happening if the Houthis weren't bombed in March and Iran's nuclear sites were struck by the Trump administration, along with Israel, in June. And what do I mean by that? Well, we always hear peace through strength. And that is a perfect example. You know, we always think it's like, oh, not a bumper sticker, but oh, Reagan said it. And oh, it's such a great GOP line. Now, hold on for a second. This is exactly what we're talking about. The strength came first with the Houthis. What was it, about 800 or so Houthis blown up to smithereens? I hate to say it, but that was the case back in March. And then Iran's nuclear sites gone. That was the strength part. And that now comes the peace. Why? Because they know that Trump will make good on his promises. And his promise was, if you don't come to the table, it's over. I'm giving Netanyahu the green light. And they knew that that would happen because of the Houthi situation and the Iranian strike situation. So that's kind of the way I see it. There's a lot more to talk about, but I'll shut up right about now.
Yeah, Dan, I want to get your thoughts on this and where things stand. And I know obviously it is still very tenuous as we're talking about it right now.
Yeah, and look, I mean, you're dealing with Hamas, a terrorist organization, and in their charter, their stated goal is to wipe out Israel. And so you can't trust that this is going to last for a very long time. You know, you just always have to keep your eye on whatever Hamas is doing. But to David's point, I think it's absolutely a good news all around. And I think it's a win for the Trump administration for sure, because regardless of if Hamas ends up, going back and fighting at some point down the road. I mean, it's very clear at this point that Trump does not want any wars, and he wants to stop them. And it's very clear who wants to keep them going. And that would be Hamas. Even when they're decimated, they keep shooting rockets off. They keep doing these things, attacks and whatnot. So I think Trump has been very clear on his foreign policy. And I think this is one of the areas, whatever people happen to think about Trump on different issues, that domestic issues and whatnot, he's been very good on this sort of thing and negotiating these conflicts and dealing with these conflicts. I feel like probably in a different way than we've ever seen a United States president do it. He's very open about it. Even when he's trying to deal with Putin and trying to handle that whole situation, which is very difficult, he does it in a little bit of a different way than I've seen presidents do it in the past. Definitely way out in the open for people to see his thoughts and what he's thinking. And so I think it's hard to deny that he's done a good job here. And now the eyes are on Hamas. What is Hamas going to do with this? Are they going to turn around? Are they going to try to make this into a good area in Gaza for once? Or is it going to fall back into a terror state? And I think the onus is on them. And Trump has made it clear that's where it is.
And just a quick addendum here. Let's remember Hamas just gave up their biggest bargaining chip. So, they're in trouble. Well, we'll get to phase two, but I just wanted to point that out.
Well, let's do that. Let's just transition into phase two. Feels like a good opportunity to do that because you're right. Hamas, the whole reason they've been holding on to these Israeli hostages for as long as they have is to try and extract things from the international community, from the United States, from Israel, and now they've taken that step. It appears, and again, we'll have to wait and see how this all plays out during the course of the beginning of the week. But what are the next steps, David? Like what you mentioned phase two, and that's where some of the even more difficult things begin. I know that, the Trump administration has this big 20-point plan that they've been talking about, that they've put in front of Arab nations and other Arab leaders, that was backed by former British Prime Minister Tony Blair. So what's the next step here?
So out of those 20 points, and I looked specifically at the plan, 5 of them will be fulfilled in this first phase with the hostages and Israel withdrawing to a certain boundary line, if you will. So that's 5. The next phase, I see this in 3 phases. I guess phase 3 is going to be, kind of the long-term security and governance, if you will. But the second phase here is disarming Hamas. Yeah, good luck with that. So, one of the points on the plan is that they would literally surrender their weapons. I want to say the exact, I'm trying to think of the exact word, decommission, I think was the word. Decommission their weapons. And trust me, that language is used on purpose. So I'm going to have to, I don't consult a dictionary often. I probably should, but I'll look to see what decommission exactly means as opposed to surrender or give up. But they're going to have to give up, in essence, or lay down their arms. Think Hamas is really going to do that? And if they are, what's their get around, if you will? What's their workaround for that? So that's one issue because that's in the plan. Another part of the issue there is that all of these tunnels that they've been building, these underground tunnels, will be destroyed and never rebuilt. Really? Hamas going to do a check mark on that too? And then, of course, the third part of this phase 2 is that they would no longer govern in Gaza. Are they really going to want to give up Gaza? Well, they may have to based on their situation at this point. But the point is that those are 3 very difficult asks, if you will, if you're Hamas, for sure. So I'm not quite sure how that exactly gets accomplished. And also remember that another one of the points in the plan is that Hamas would basically be able to have free passage out of Gaza. Any terrorists there, knock yourself out, go somewhere in the desert, go to the Sinai, go anywhere, but get out of Gaza. And so, what does that mean exactly? So Hamas kind of I don't want to say gets off the hook, but, gets off the hook because let's be honest, you got the right in Israel saying, finish the job, if you know what I'm saying. So that's not going to go over well either. So you have all of that. And then, oh, by the way, did I bury the lead? The first part of phase 1 allows, and this is the best thing for Hamas, to get many, 250 or so, it might be more actually, prisoners, and I put that in air quote, prisoners from Israeli jails. These are terrorists. I mean, these are bad dudes, okay? And Israel's had a line in the sand saying, look, we're not going to give you, there's like 4 for sure. One of them is like their spiritual leader. Hamas's spiritual leader is like having, I don't know, 43, 52, 65 hike sentences or so over there. So Israel said, no, you're not getting him. And there's a couple other really, really bad dudes. You're not getting them. But apparently they are getting bad dudes. They're just not getting really bad dudes. The point is that this is a chance for Hamas to rearm. Because they are getting, it's kind of like the player to be named later in a baseball trade. You know, all of these terrorists to be named later are coming back. Guys, let's just not fool ourselves, and let's just be straight with ourselves and the audience. This is an opportunity for Hamas to rearm. That's why they agreed to this, because they're getting some of their bench players, the minor leaguers, back in the game. Give them 2 years, give them 3 years, give them 7 years, but they're coming back. River of the Sea didn't die, so, and that mentality didn't die because the Quran is still alive, according to what they believe. So anyhow, I've gone on and on, but that's where we're at.
No, and I just want to say that I think that this deal being so prominent and out there and all these points and everything, even if you release these terrorists, which I know Israel isn't like, and a lot of people don't like, you get these terrorists out there, and it's unfortunate. But if they agree to this deal, and then rockets start flying from Hamas into Israel again, now they have to prepare for that. And you know, I think Trump's plan probably does address this to some extent about, well, if you break this and you keep fighting again, like, you know, I guess, are we back at square one? And then Israel's got to roll tanks back into Gaza and flatten it again. But I mean, it's just like, at this point, it just seems like everyone in the globe, at least their eyes understand the eye test. We can't see rockets flying from Gaza into Israel again. Like, we just can't see that. And now we know how the world works. Like you said, David, everybody hates Israel and the media hates Israel and so many people hate Israel. And it's like, they'll still find a way to blame Israel for that, I'm sure.
Right.
But everything laid out, it just seems like if they start doing all the shenanigans that they did in the past, it would be, I guess, you know what? I guess I shouldn't be surprised if then the world is still against Israel at that point. But it would be even extra ridiculous if that were the case, if that were to happen.
Yeah. And Dan, real quick, one other thing. It seems to me that, I mean, Netanyahu has been under some pressure by the family members of these hostages to do everything to get these hostages released. There have been rallies and protests over the course of the last year, but a year and a half. And they've been growing because there has been a call for these hostages to be released, the ones that are still alive. And so I wonder what kind of political pressure you think Netanyahu has been under, and whether this helps him moving forward. I mean, it kind of takes this off of the list of things that they need to do, and you know, it kind of does. I know I hear what everybody's saying about the Palestinian prisoners being released, but I'm guessing there's, you know, you're weighing these different things if you're Netanyahu, and the political benefits, and even maybe some of the strategic benefits of now you're not concerned about what might happen to hostages. That if you continue to fight this war against Hamas and go after Hamas leadership the way that they have, is there an argument to be made that Netanyahu kind of had to do this, even if it meant giving up the Hamas prisoners?
Yeah, I think so. And I'm not David, maybe you're a little more familiar with the internal Israeli politics that are going on with Netanyahu. I know they've got their own political divisions inside there. So, but just judging by the reaction that I saw from the families and relatives and people celebrating this news that they were going to be released, I think it appears, at least on the outside, to be well received. And I think he did. You were going to have to make concessions. It's unfortunate. Like, you don't want to reward that behavior, but listen, we get all the hostages home. And if that actually happens, I think Netanyahu look at that as like a win for him, even with some of these horrible terrorists having to go free, like I said, because, okay, we did what you said now. And if you, and you did what we said, and we had an agreement. And if you break that, I mean, that's on you at that point.
Yeah, I think it's a hard pill to swallow. Obviously, that goes without saying. But
sure.
But at the same time, I would also say that the hard right in Israel is not going to be happy at all with this, because they want to do the old Nikki Haley finish the job situation. But having said that, the majority, I mean, Chris Mitchell could speak more clearly to this, but there's no doubt that the sentiment in Israel is to bring the hostages home. And remember, there's this view in Israel, because they joined the IDF at 18 and all that. There's a view, kind of a militaristic view, excuse me, yeah, of basically not leaving anybody behind, a soldier behind. So there's that kind of view that like we got to get him out, and so I think that's a big part of it too.
Last thing on this, David, this obviously didn't happen in time for President Trump to be considered for the Nobel Peace Prize. That was announced on Friday morning. It went to Maria Corina Machado, who is a Venezuelan activist, and they gave it to her for her tireless work. This is from the Nobel Peace Prize website, for her tireless work promoting democratic rights for the people of Venezuela, and for her struggle to achieve a just and peaceful transition from dictatorship to democracy. I don't know much about her. It sounds like it's a really important part of the world, a country that I don't think we talk about enough in terms of an adversary of the United States. But the White House and the president had been pushing for President Trump to be given the Nobel Peace Prize. A few world leaders who are friendly to Trump, Netanyahu included, submitted his name. You don't know exactly. I don't know. I have no idea how the process works. When there's if there's a deadline or a decision is made.
It's January 31st,
point, right? Yeah.
January 31st. So Trump took office January 20th. So this whole thing's just been kind of bogus as a storyline, if you think about it. I mean, he was only in office 11 days before the deadline. So I think we need to remember that. I think, will it be considered for the 2026 Nobel Peace Prize? Yes. Yeah, of course. Now, having said that, do I think he's going to get the Nobel Peace Prize? No. I mean, that's like him winning a Lifetime Achievement Award from the White House Correspondents Association. I mean, that's the way I see it. I mean, I think he's got a better shot at that. And by the way, you'd have to also be a card-carrying globalist. You'd have to have a card-carrying globalist card. I don't know if that's an Amex card or whatever, and give about 4 pints of blood. And that could get him on the short list, by the way. I don't even know if he wins. So, no, I don't think so. I don't know if we're going to move on or if Dan's going to say something, but I wanted to say one thing about phase 3, but go ahead. Do we want to keep on Nobel Peace Prize? Whatever you want to do. I don't care.
No, go ahead. I'll hear phase 3.
Oh, well, phase 3, and I'll be brief. Yeah, famous last words. No, I really will be brief. So look, the phase 3 is the kind of what does Gaza look like, right? The governance part of it. And this is where Trump could really get into some trouble here politically, because remember, he's now what is he called? The governor, the president? No, what is it? The governor of peace? What's he called? It's a peace. I forgot the name of it now. He called himself something in that 20-point statement. I can't remember. He's the head of this peace board is the point. And there's this international stabilization force, the ISF, International Stabilization Force, where countries from, in the Arab world are going to help out, kind of patrol Gaza. But, oh, by the way, now we're finding out that 200 U.S. troops will be sent, or they're already actually on their way to the Middle East. They're actually going to be in Israel. But when do they actually set foot in Gaza? I know the administration will say, we're not setting one boot down in Gaza. Okay, we'll see about that. The point is that for a president who talked about, why are we in the Middle East? What are we doing? We need to get out of there. He was very critical of George W. Bush, and and he goes back in the day. Here we are. We've got a footprint in the Middle East right now. So I think this could really come back a little bit with MAGA, at least to bite him. He doesn't have to run for re-election. So that's good. But I do think it'll be a contour for the 2028 presidential race.
Yeah, I really do wish, and this is not just a Donald Trump thing, but I really do wish people who are running for president, there's lofty ideals and things that you say, and then you get in there and you realize, okay, I kind of get why the other guys did it this way, or, and I think we see that in all levels of government, especially as the higher up you get. I do want to transition to the government shutdown, which finishes up its second week and will certainly enter a third week next week. There does not appear to be any kind of agreement in sight. The Senate has been, for much of the week, continuing to vote on that House passed resolution that continues to come up 5 votes short of breaking the filibuster that's in place right now. And so there's a number of different layers to this. I mean, I know you have the military pay is at risk. There are a number of members talking about whether to do a standalone bill for military pay. You have air traffic controllers who are going to work without pay, but you've been seeing some shortages in airports. You have furloughed federal workers. You have some federal workers who are going to be laid off, with this whole thing. And the Senate will not return. They're not expected to come back until Tuesday at 3 o'clock Eastern time next week. So certainly this is extending into the middle of next week. And the argument's been going back and forth. David, Democrats continue to hammer on these Obamacare subsidies and making sure that these don't go away, that they can. And they've been telling a lot of stories from constituents about personal stories of people who are going to see their healthcare costs skyrocket or their ability to access healthcare go away. They feel they're making some progress and some headway on convincing the American people that what they're doing is right, that this is worth it. Republicans continue to point to Democrats and say, listen, we've passed a clean CR. This is what you guys have always said. This is what we should do in the past. Pass the CR and let's get back to work. David, who's winning this argument right now as this stretches into a third week? Do you get a sense who's winning?
I get more than a sense. It's Republicans that are winning it. And here's why. Mike Johnson in the House can always point to the fact that Republicans passed a clean CR. They voted yes. Republicans voted yes. In the Senate, all Republicans except for Rand Paul are going to vote yes. So therefore, the Republicans are yes on continuing to fund the government. The Democrats are no. It's just that simple. Now, they bring up Obamacare subsidies, but here's the problem. This is the hill to die on. This is the Democrats' hill to die on. I don't get it, because here's the problem. There's a lot of other issues on the other side that are now starting to take shape, and you listed many of them. You talked about the military pay and many other paychecks and TSA layoffs, and don't forget WIC, right? I mean, the Women and Infant and Children program going to run out of money. It's running out of money, and that won't be available. Wait till those stories come out, where you see women with their babies saying, "I can't afford," or I can't afford baby formula. So. You're fighting for Obamacare subsidies. Okay, great. Way to go. You're fighting for Obamacare subsidies, but all this other stuff is happening. So it's kind of like one of those things on the scale. It's like, okay, you got this, but all this other bad stuff is happening because you're fighting for one big thing. Look, I think ultimately from a weight perspective, the weight on the scale, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work, Dan.
Yeah, and especially like you're saying, when you look at the Obamacare subsidies, like healthcare costs are just, they're absurd right now. And listen, I'm going through a couple things personally, anecdotally myself, that are just incredibly frustrating. And, I don't even know if you could blame Obamacare for this. All I know is that I'm dealing with this, and it's very frustrating. It's one of those things where you say, well, what is this going to cost? And I know this has been a longstanding problem. So they can't tell you what something costs, and then you get like 17 different bills for things, and you're like, what did I even pay for in my insurance? Like, what is going on? And so if I'm dealing with that, and everyone else with insurance is dealing with something similar, if you're going to sit there and say, this is what we're hanging our hat on here, 100% agree with you that is not going to land well. Regardless of I'm sure it's a complicated issue, and there are lots of different factors to blame for everything. I get all that. I'm just saying, from a human perspective angle, people are likely highly frustrated with their healthcare costs right now. And if it's perceived that Democrats are trying to keep these subsidies in that are contributing to said higher costs, it's just a terrible political position for them to be in, and a hill to die on. Like you said, it's just, I don't see how this works out for them as far as the blame game, which is essentially what ends up happening in these shutdowns. Is it just becomes a massive blame game, and that's what we're seeing right now. And obviously, if Republicans, got the things they wanted, and they could keep things funded right now, and so it's hard not to kind of leave it at that. The Democrats are essentially going to be the ones landed with blame on this.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that comes to pass is you have the issue with furloughed federal workers and all of this, and most Americans, I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but they are concerned about their own lives, their own health care, whether or not, like you said, David, they can access milk and food and with food stamps and get access to everything like that. And they're not as concerned about what federal workers in Washington, D.C. and Northern Virginia and Maryland are dealing with furloughs. And, the president and the White House indicated this week that they would be looking at the 2019 act that guaranteed back pay for furloughed federal workers, that they're making the argument that it only applies to that 2019 mean shutdown. And I think Republicans and Democrats, even the IRS has told their furloughed employees that the 2019 law does apply to them. And so there are arguments being used by the Trump administration, and Dan, it seems to me like that this is being used specifically as a tactic to try and get Democrats and urge Democrats to come to the table, because they don't want to hear from some of their constituents, especially the senators in Virginia, right? I mean, you've got Warner and you've got it's Kaine, right?
Tim Kaine, yeah.
Tim Kaine. I just had a brain fart there, but yes, okay.
Join the crowd.
Just it happens. It's the argument that's you're not going to get the majority of the American people to care overly about what's happening to people who live in Virginia and Washington, D.C. But that said, the tactics that are being argued, the way these things are being negotiated, who's gonna bend first? Is it gonna be the Democrats? Is this argument that with the healthcare, is that gonna run out? Are Republicans gonna outlast them? This is gonna end at some point, and not before too long. I'm curious what the end game here is.
Yeah, I mean, David, I would be interested to hear you have a lot more knowledge on the inner kind of workings of DC than I do. But I mean, my sense just from looking outside is at some point Democrats are going to have to find a way to gracefully as they can bow out of this thing and keep their constituents happy to some extent for whatever issues they feel like they need to stand firm on. But I feel like they're just going to have to relinquish it at some point, the fight to keep, and they're the ones that are always constantly saying how important it is to fund all these government things. And if the perception game, if they sense that they're losing it, which I suspect they do, they're going to have to find a way to walk on out of this thing.
Yeah. So a couple of things. So let's go through the timeline, right? There's that vote. What did you say? October 13th? No, I'm sorry. Tuesday, the 14th of next week, right? You said they're coming back for that?
They're just coming back that day, but it's not, I don't know that they're definitely going to vote on anything that day.
I think there's going to be a vote around 3 p.m. or so on the 14th, but we'll see. The point is, let's say there's a vote on the 14th. Here's what's going on. There's a Stop the Kings rally on October 18th. This is that big, rally the Democrats are at. All right, so it's going to go on through then, because they want the photo op, and Schumer wants to be going rah, rah, sis, boom, bah, and they want that. So it's happening through the 18th. So that takes us into the week of October 20th. I think the way this ends for Democrats, this is their only out, is that I don't want to call them moderates, but a few Democrats go ahead and they get to 60. So right now, what is it, 52, right? Because Rand Paul's a no. He's just principally just not going to vote for any sort of continuing resolution. So you need 8 Democrats. They've got 3. They got Angus King. They got Fetterman. They got Cortez Mastro. They got, that's 3. There's one more. Anyhow, that's 55. They're going to need 5 more Democrats. And I think what's going to probably end up happening in the back channels, and I don't want to do any paraphrasing, but why not? I'm from New York. I'll do some paraphrasing. I might even throw in an accent. I think what's going to end up happening is that these Democrats, whoever they are, will come and save the day for Schumer, because Schumer will never vote for this continuing resolution. He will be torched by the left. He did it in March. He won't do it because AOC/somebody, some Marxist out there somewhere, is going to run against Schumer, and he'll lose his Senate seat the way this is going right now. And so he doesn't want that. And so he can't vote for the CR, and he can't even say, I'm going to bring it up for a vote, or no, he can't bring it up for a vote, but he's not going to do anything. So therefore, there are going to be 5 other Democrats, 3 Democrats already. They need 8. 5 other Democrats are going to basically bail Schumer out. I think that's what's going to end up happening. And I don't know who those 5 are. It might be, people like Chris Coons and Tim Kaine and some other considered center left rather than far left. And I think they'll just say, you know what, I'm in a safe district and I'll do it. Because I won't have any sort of repercussions. But you're not going to get like John Ossoff from Georgia, who's up for re-election. You're not going to get that type of person to do it. But I think that's the way it works. Democrats are going to have to cave. I've never seen Republicans this airtight on something before. I mean, normally it's Republicans snipping at each other, and it's the House Freedom Caucus and X, Y, and Z, and got the moderate Republicans from California, New York. Nothing. They're all, I mean, I've never seen it like this. I mean, from my sources and what I'm hearing from congressmen I'm talking to, they're saying we're airtight. We're absolutely airtight, which is bad news for Democrats.
Yeah, definitely an unusual turn of events. You're right. That's not how it's gone over the last decade or so. But we'll see how this all plays out. Your timeline makes sense as far as politics are concerned, and we'll see if that holds true. In the meantime, we'll leave it there for this week. Dan Andros, David Brody, thanks once again for joining me here on Navigating Trump 2.0.